Hello, everyone. Welcome to another short one from the Real Canadian Liberal Podcast. It's Stu here. I'd just like to make a quick comment on the urban-rural divide in Alberta on government policy, in particular government policy regarding SARS-CoV-2, COVID-19. Most people are like, oh, all of these lockdowns and everything else, they're absolutely nuts. That's what you get from the rural community. People in the cities are like, oh, we need to lock down harder. So why is there that divide? Because it's a pretty big divide. I mean, there are people in the cities who disagree, and there's people in the rural community who want more lockdowns, but there's generally a divide along rural and urban lines. And there's a simple reason for that. Most people who live in cities are completely detached from the natural world. I'm not joking. They live in the concrete jungle. They don't deal with infectious disease in any practical sense every day. People in rural Alberta do. Their entire livelihoods are based on the life sciences for the most part. If you're talking about farmers and ranchers, you see those farmers out in the fields all summer long with the sprayers and everything else. They're dealing with various types of infectious disease quite often. They're dealing with sort of root infections. They're dealing with other sorts of blights and bits and bobs. Ranchers go beyond that. They're managing infectious disease in large herds of livestock all the time. There are ranchers out here in central Alberta who have forgotten more about infectious disease than most general practitioner doctors will ever learn. I know of ranchers who they can look at an animal of a particular species, the one they're used to, and they can pretty much diagnose what disease that animal is suffering from just by that animal's body language, or it's the consistency of its manure, or the color, or whatever. That's what they do for a living. This is what these people do, managing infectious disease. So when they hear that there's a bug out there, whether it's a coronavirus or an influenza or whatever, they instantly go, okay, well, how bad is it? Because when they're looking over the corral fence at 200 animals, they're thinking, well, how bad is it? Is it something that's going to affect everything? Are they going to get over it quickly? Does it need treatment, etc., etc.? That is a constant, everyday assessment that a large proportion of rural Alberta is making every day. Right? They're dealing with at least a dozen, if not 20, infectious diseases every year, all the time, with multiple species of animals. And so when they see another disease come out, SARS-CoV-2, for example, or COVID-19, they go, well, how bad is it? Is it going to affect me? Is it going to affect my family? Is it going to affect the elderly? Who's it going to affect? Because dealing with animals, that's what they do. Is it going to affect the calves? Is it going to affect the adults? Is it going to affect the older animals? Standard assessment. They do it every day. It's their business. If they don't know how to do it, they go out of business and their families go hungry. Here's the thing. People in the cities don't do any of that. For the most part. Some do. I mean, I'm not saying it's a complete across-the-board statement. It's a bit of a generalization. So this is why there's a urban-rural divide in Alberta. The people who understand infectious disease, the people who understand the biological sciences, the people who work with the biological sciences every day, the people who understand soil microbiome and the ruminant microbiome and stuff like that, because that's what their livelihood is based in, they look at the science. They can read a scientific paper. The references to scientific papers are in the beef producers' Stockman's magazines. It's in the Stockman Grass Farmer paper. It's in all of these publications that agricultural people read all the time. There are scientists writing about soil science. They're writing about plant science. They're writing about livestock science. They're talking about rumen science. They're talking about genetics, genomics, the whole thing. That is the daily life of your average rural Albertan. Now, if you're in the urban community, how much do you know about genomics? How much do you know what a single nucleotide polymorphism is? Most people in the rural community don't. Almost every rancher in Alberta does. Do you know the difference between a microsatellite test and a single nucleotide polymorphism test? What are the advantages or disadvantages of each one? Most urban people couldn't tell you. They have no idea what those things are. And yet, a large proportion of ranchers in Alberta can tell you exactly what the differences are. They can tell you what the technological differences are. They can tell you when these tests were developed, what the advantages and disadvantages are. Maybe not in the detail that a genomics specialist at Neogen Canada can tell you, but these are the customers of Neogen Canada. They're the people who are asking for these tests. They're the ones collecting DNA samples every year. Us, for example. That's what I do. They're the ones who understand soil science. They understand what happens under the ground. They understand what happens at the level of the plant root and the mycorrhizae fungi links up with various types of plant. Arbuscular mycorrhizal fungi, right? Most people who make their living off of grass, off of nature, off of polyculture, natural or tame pastures, grasslands, understand that stuff. They can identify dung beetles. They know what they do. They can tell if a field is healthy or unhealthy based on the insect population there. And they're the ones calling BS on COVID, because they know what an infection fatality rate of 0.015 or 0.05 for people under the age of 70 means. Because it's just a risk assessment. We go, okay, well, 0.05, that's not very bad. It's only affecting people who are got other comorbidities. They understand what comorbidities mean, because if you've got an animal that is sick, you understand that if it gets something else, it makes it worse. It's basic science. And here's the thing, something arrived in the mail here. This is a little bit of a side. This is not necessarily urban-rural divide, but something else for you to think about. I got this card. Alberta, it's time to sign up, show up, and follow up. Statement on here. Immunization is safe, effective, and necessary. Really? Well, depends what immunization you're talking about. Safe. None of the vaccines or gene therapies being pushed for SARS-CoV-2 have been through any safe approval process. They have not gone through the adverse reaction trials that a normal vaccine goes through. And some of them are gene therapies. They're not technically vaccines at all. Are they safe? Well, to claim that they're safe is idiotic because they haven't been through the safety trials. So the answer is, you can't say that. In fact, that's illegal to claim that. And the head of the FDA in the US made a statement about a week and a half, 2 weeks ago, saying, we have not approved any of these. They are released for emergency use only. Right? Emergency use. That's right. So they're an experiment. Right? So you're a guinea pig. Right? Effective. There's not much data on that either. Right? Symptom reduction. We've got lots of people out there saying, oh, they don't stop you catching it or transmitting it now. Well, if they're effective, they would stop you from catching it or transmitting it. And yet, there's plenty of evidence out there to say that a lot of the people who are dying in the southern states at the moment have been vaccinated using Pfizer, Moderna, Johnson & Johnson, whatever, one of these vaccines or gene therapies. And it obviously isn't working. Right? Now, does that have an effect? It probably does. It might reduce the number of deaths, but it certainly isn't making people immune to these things. So, effective? That is a rather spurious claim, and necessary. Really? Necessary? For a disease that you can cure pretty much by supplementing your vitamin D in the wintertime, cutting all the junk seed oils and processed garbage out of your diet, and making yourself halfway healthy. Because if you do that, and that's all you need to do, take you all of 3 weeks to fix your metabolic dysfunction, unless you've got cancer or something else. But I'm talking about your average person on the street. These vaccines are more dangerous than the disease for someone who is metabolically healthy. It's not a joke. That is statistical fact. The data's out there. It's not hard to find. You can find it in Stanford University publications. You can find it in Oxford, Cambridge, whatever. There's lots and lots of people who have published on this. So, safe, effective, and necessary. If you give that information to a member of the public, it gives them the impression that these things are, in fact, safe, approved, and necessary. And if they take that vaccine, you don't have properly informed consent. And you have now violated Article 36 of the Geneva Convention and the Nuremberg Code. Because you are putting someone into a medical experiment without their without their informed consent. That is a crime against humanity. In fact, it's in the Geneva Conventions, which cover war crimes. Because it was put in there after the Nazis were doing that. So, urban-rural divide. It's pretty clear and simple why that's the case. The urban people do not live and generally work in the biological sciences, and the people in the rural areas do. And so the people who understand the biological sciences are less concerned about a biological issue than people who don't work in that environment. So that's pretty simple. And vaccine, gene therapy, safety? Well, I suggest you find a copy of the Geneva Conventions, look it up online, look at Article 36, then look at the Nuremberg Code on informed consent. And then you'll learn that this little thing that says Alberta on the corner of it is illegal. This document here could put someone in prison. They're breaking the law by making these claims without the science to back them up. Right? That's the reality. So suggest you find out whoever wrote these things, whoever published this, whoever signed off on this. Yeah, find yourself a good lawyer. That's my advice. All right. That's it from me. Find yourself a good lawyer. What a great way to stop, eh? Anyway, right. That's it from me. Have a good day, everyone, and have a think about that. Thanks. Bye.